I am so excited about today's episode of Confidence Conversations because we have Dr. Kausel on to tell us all about hormones and what's happening in our bodies when we're not paying attention. So, Dr. Kausel, how are you?
I'm very good, Jocelyn. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. I know a lot of us here on this confidence journey are really looking for answers, and a lot of that we think of in terms of our mental and emotional health. But a lot of confidence too starts with what we're feeling physically, because our physical bodies give us indications of what could be going on emotionally or just plain old, hey, stop, pay attention. So I want to know, as an endocrinologist, how do our hormones impact our mental and physical health?
So hormones, every hormone in your body, like our organs communicate through hormones. And usually when we say, oh, my hormones are crazy, we usually refer to the sex hormones, which are estrogen, progesterone, or testosterone in men. But hormones are everywhere. Hormones are in the stomach, in the pancreas, in the pituitary gland, in the pineal gland, and the thyroid gland. That's the way organs communicate to each other. And one hormone can stimulate one organ and inhibit another one. So hormones have different receptors in different parts of the body. So any hormone can affect our mental and physical health. If you think about, like, for example, thyroid hormones are in every single receptor of the body. So a lack or an excess of thyroid hormone can cause symptoms in absolutely every organ of the body. So they are involved in everything. They're involved in everything, pretty much, from sleep to hunger to anxiety, bowel movements, whether your heart beats 60 times per minute or 120 times per minute. They're involved in everything.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because usually you're right. We don't talk about hormones at this basic level. It's very specific about like estrogen or testosterone, or that's it. Or like maybe we're thinking about like starting a family or not wanting a family. So we talk about the other hormones associated with our cycle. But that's pretty much the extent of it in everyday conversation. So I love that you just kind of broke that down for us. So now that we know that like hormones literally control basically everything that we do, I want to talk about some of our basic functions. I know, like, waking up, a lot of us, the first thing that we do, if it's not coffee, it's tea or something to give us that extra boost of energy. But what are some of the other underlying causes that we could be feeling lethargic throughout the day other than just being groggy in the morning?
When people repeat over and over, like sleep well and eat well, it's because it comes from somewhere. Our bodies are super smart, and there are hormones that are meant to act throughout the day, and there are hormones that are meant to work mostly at night. It is very important that these hormones that work at night don't have insulin on board, because insulin inhibits a lot of these hormones: growth hormone, cortisol, epinephrine. Like, there are hormones that are working in the back end that prepare us for the next day. For example, there is a normal peak of cortisol in the early morning that prepares us for the stress of the day. And if we don't have a normal circadian rhythm, all these hormones can be disrupted. So this is why we say get enough sleep. This is what we say, have a normal routine with a normal eating schedule when you don't like start eating at 1 or 2 a.m. Because once you rupture that routine and that schedule, your hormones get disrupted, and you can have, you name it, lack of energy or not having good bowel movements. For fatigue, which is your specific question, we can have, people usually blame cortisol. Like, either excess cortisol and low cortisol can cause fatigue, but these are diseases. Like, there's no such thing as adrenal fatigue, which is disease from integrative medicine and holistic medicine that hasn't been identified by the endocrine society and the endocrinology societies out there. But people blame it to the cortisol and your adrenal glands because they're working too much. I don't know what's the reasoning behind it, but cortisol is big out there in terms of fatigue. but also thyroid hormone when our thyroids are not working well, when the thyroid is even within normal limits, but more towards the upper limit of normal. You have something called subclinical hypothyroidism that can lead to you not feeling at your best. This hormone sometimes need cofactors like vitamins. So if you're undernourished, if your ferritin, if your iron levels are not optimal, if your vitamin B12 levels are not optimal, this is something I see every day. Vitamin B12 deficiency is very, very common nowadays. And vitamin B12 is super important for the nervous system. So that's another part. If you have the tendency to be overweight, or if you have diabetes, prediabetes, and all this metabolic stuff, those hormones can also cause fatigue by the miscommunication between the brain and the gut hormones. And it's just like this physiological process through the vagus nerve that makes our metabolic rate decrease. And we feel more fatigued because our bodies are trying to save energy.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's so complex that's why we always have to do a very thorough, what we call history and present illness, which is we ask for everything. We ask for sleep habits, we ask for eating habits, daily stressors, gut, heart, everything, because we have to look and see what's the culprit.
Yeah, so it sounds like this really is like a holistic approach if we want to identify what's going on. But you mentioned something, which is B12, which seems to be an issue for many people. How do we begin to integrate more B12 into our diets?
So B12 is made by bacteria, is mostly present in animal protein and is produced by bacteria. But now with the use of pesticides, even if the animals are grass-fed, they're not getting enough of this bacteria. I see it a lot in vegetarian and vegan diets, but I see it a lot in people who eat normally. So my suggestion is always to buy protein that it's good quality, like grass-fed animals, organic. If it's not possible, then just take B12 supplements.
Mm-hmm. And how do you feel about the B12 shots?
I think it's not needed. Why would you get such a painful shot? Have you ever gotten B12 shots?
I have, and I
So
didn't
painful.
notice a difference. So yeah.
So even patients that have pernicious anemia, which is when they cannot absorb vitamin B12, if you give them high doses of B12, the B12 levels can be normal. So you just take a daily. I don't know why the B12 shots became so popular, but I replace all my patients with oral B12, methylated B12, and it's okay.
Yeah, that's super helpful. So as women, we go through a lot of changes in our bodies throughout the seasons and different phases of our lives. And I'm sure there's a hormonal story that goes with that as well. So can you walk us through like the different stages of our lives through, puberty to adulthood and motherhood and menopause, and what's happening with us at a hormonal level during those life shifts?
Okay, so with women, you're basically born neutral with a uterus and ovaries that are dormant. And then once you start reaching puberty, your adrenal glands wake up and your ovaries wake up. So your ovaries start making estrogen, and that estrogen and the pituitary gland starts sending the signal to the ovaries so they can start producing the hormones in order to create ovulation and then create a menstrual cycle. The adrenal glands start producing, and the adrenal glands are always producing cortisol and aldosterone, which are other two main hormones from the adrenal glands, but the androgen part is the part that gives us the sexual characteristics, like a little bit in men, pubic hair, in women also, pubic hair, axillary hair, facial hair a little bit. That's like the awakening of your adrenal glands. And then the menstrual cycle starts. So at the beginning, it's like very strong. Your ovaries are like brand new. You're born with around 2 million eggs. And those eggs, regardless of whether you take birth control or not, regardless of what you do, certain amount of eggs die every cycle. And amongst those eggs, there's one chosen for ovulation. So that is a menstrual cycle. The brain sends a signal, the ovaries start making estrogen. Then once the peak starts, the peak of estrogen matures the egg gets released, and if it doesn't get fertilized, then progesterone starts maturing the layers of the uterus, and that layer decides to die because it's no longer useful. And then you get your menstrual period. So that is a menstrual cycle. Between menarche, which is when you start your menstrual cycle in your teens and 20s, you should always have one menstrual cycle per month. The menstrual cycle is the biggest indicator of health in women, because we know that our hormones, if your menstrual cycle is between 28 and 32 days, our hormones are regulated. Yes, in certain parts of the cycle, we're estrogen dominant. In certain part of the cycles, we're progesterone dominant, because that is how the menstrual cycle works. And in all this, the ovaries are making a little bit of testosterone. During all your reproductive life, this is how it should work. You get more pimples at the beginning between your teens and your 20s. And then once you reach 30s, your cycle tends to normalize more. Once you reach 40, mid 40s, a progesterone deficiency starts, and women usually start feeling as if they were teenagers again. So they come to me saying that my boobs are swollen again. I get very, like premenstrual syndrome, like my symptoms are very heavy, and that's usually due to fluctuations. The estrogen levels are like super strong at the beginning of the cycle, and then the cycles can shorten because there is not enough progesterone. And this happens until the age of menopause. And once menopause happens, that means your ovaries are no longer useful and they're no longer producing estrogen. And that comes with other symptoms, because estrogen has not only effects on the menstrual cycle, but also heart, bone, and other organs. So you lose the protection for heart disease, which women usually have with estrogen. The bone loses protection, so women are more susceptible to get osteoporosis. And the hot flashes come as a consequence of the vascular effect of estrogen in the vessels.
Oh, wow. That's so fascinating. I want to like re-listen to that back, because I feel like that was just like a master course in like women's.
I mean, in a nutshell, I hope I was not too complicated, my answer. Men don't have to go through this. Men just have testosterone, and it fluctuates throughout the day, but they have steady levels, which is, I find it so unfair.
Yeah, it's so unfair.
It's very unfair.
How do we manage that? Because I know with like different levels and with these fluctuations comes different emotions that maybe we feel like we can't control, which ultimately can affect our confidence levels. So how do we get a hold of that, or maybe like identify when our body is going through different changes so that we can get ahead of it?
So keep track of the cycle. Some women, it's their choice to be started on birth control, and they feel super controlled and very stable with it, which is fine. But nowadays, women want to take less and less hormones, which is also understandable. If there's not a medical indication for it, or they're not trying to prevent pregnancy, it's fine if they don't decide to do it. You can't really control your hormones. And now you see all this like influencers, hormonal experts, which I don't even understand what that means, but they keep telling you that they have this diet so you can take control of your hormone, and they recommend like taking, eating all this kinds of like stuff because you're progesterone dominant or you're estrogen dominant. Like there's nothing really that will help control your hormones. Your hormones are your hormones. You can't control how much estrogen you want to produce. You can't control how much progesterone your egg wants to produce after ovulation. This is not something you can unfortunately control, but you can notice it. And in my case, like I just notice, oh, I'm bloated, is because I'm in that part of the cycle. And you just get over it. Like you just know how to understand why it's happening. And I think that helps coping with the feeling and then moving on. Like, yes, progesterone makes you feel bloated and makes you feel exhausted. The first days of your period, your estrogen levels are super low. So you are going to feel exhausted. You're going to need maybe a little bit more of coffee or tea. It's going to take a little bit more effort at the gym, if it's a normal cycle. Then if this is interfering with your regular quality of life, then that's something to look out for. Like you should go to a doctor and see what, measurements you can take in order to control your hormones if it's something that is getting out of control.
So it sounds like we just need to go with the flow, which I was going to say, but now it's like literally go with the flow.
I
I
know
like
it's so hard. It's so hard. But when it comes to menstrual cycle, like we can't control, imagine if you could control your hormones, it would be amazing, but you can't. I mean, yes, meditation techniques help, but the bloating with progesterone, like that's what progesterone does. It
Mhm.
makes you bloated and it always will. It makes you sleep better, but it makes you very tired. And that's what it does. And estrogen makes you feel amazing. So it's just, I hope we could control. Are you kidding me?
But I think it's helpful to know that because I know that there is sometimes a lot of shame associated with the way that we feel, even if it's I'm so tired, but I'm eating the right things and doing the right things I don't understand, or I've been feeling sad lately, or whatever it is. And sometimes it just comes with the natural progression, it sounds like, of our cycles. And so just having some understanding and peace within to be like, this is normal. Like if this is normal for you, I should say, but like if this is happening and you notice that this is occurring month to month, then to kind of go with that and just understand your body and what it could be telling you.
Yes, that's why it's important to track to
Mhm.
see if it's really related to the cycle. Because if you track, then and you get a diary and you start writing, like today I felt like this and this and this, and then you start noticing that it's always in that part of the cycle. So
Mhm.
then you blame your hormones. Sometimes it can be other things that are wrong, and so that's why it's important to rule out things first before you say it's hormonal. And
Yeah.
that's why if it's something that is really bothering you and that never happened before, then you should definitely go and seek some,
Yeah.
medical advice.
That's super helpful. So I want to pivot from talking about the cycle to talking about weight and fitness because we hear so many things, and you touch on this too about like, take this supplement, get this shot, lose a lot of weight. And one of the biggest things that we could do is related to our diets. But we're hearing a lot about juicing, and I know that you are against juicing, at least in some.
Endocrinologists hate
Yes.
juicing.
So tell us about juicing and what it actually is doing.
So the problem with juicing, so vegetables and fruits are super healthy, right? And they're composed mainly by fiber and sugars, both vegetables and fruits. Vegetables have more fiber and less sugary, and fruits have more sugar, but they also have fiber. When you juice something, or even when you blend it, because we have soluble fiber and insoluble fiber, and you actually need both. Both are equally important. So when you juice or when you blend something, you're getting rid of all that fiber. And fiber, not only it feeds your microbacteria in the gut, and it avoids all that sugar to be absorbed. So when you juice something, even a cucumber juice, you are subtracting all that fiber and only getting the sugar out of it. Yes, you're getting vitamins and minerals and all those things, but you are basically drinking all the sugary stuff. And a cucumber juice, if it's big enough, can have up to 18 grams of sugar, 15 grams of sugar, which is all going to go to the liver because the liver is the only organ in the body that processes sugar. Okay. People usually talk as sugar as carbs. Carbs are not sugar. Carbs are glucose and sugar is fructose. Maple syrup, fruits. I'm not saying fruits are bad, okay? But I'm just like comparing it. Like all the sugars, honey, agave, maple syrup, coconut sugar, like they are all composed by glucose and fructose. That's usually the molecule. Is the percentages what change. So glucose can be utilized. Every single cell in the body has glucose receptors, and it can be metabolized into energy. Fructose can only be processed by the liver, and the liver processes sugar exactly the same way it processes alcohol. And the only thing the liver knows how to make out of fructose is triglycerides, which is fat that will be accumulated in your belly, or the fat that we see. So all the juice eventually gonna go to your liver, and I see it all the time. I'm telling you, this is something I see, and that's why I insist so much on this, because I see it and they're like, I work out 2 times a day. I eat super healthy and I cannot lose weight. And you see their blood work and triglycerides are high, they're pre-diabetics, and they cannot lose weight. And it's all due to this juicing.
Mhm.
Why would you replace a meal with a juice? I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't.
So what is happening with our bodies when we don't just like integrate a juice as a meal, but like we go on these 3, 6, 5 day detoxes where all we're drinking is juices? What's happening internally?
I mean, I call it the intox instead of detox plan, because all you're giving, imagine you're putting your body through starvation, and all you're putting is the load on your liver to take care of this sugar overload. It's like that's what causes fatty liver, and not all fat is the same. Okay. When the liver processes sugar, it makes fat, and then this eventually becomes fatty liver. And you see it when you check on your blood work. How do you know if you have fatty liver? Because your ALT is high. ALT is one of the liver enzymes. If your ALT is more than 25, which is still under normal limits, you have higher risk of developing fatty liver. So basically your liver is taking over and metabolizing all this. And I mean, it's just so bad. You start in the metabolism of fructose, you produce high uric acid, which can not only give you gout, but also high blood pressure. You can make all this triglycerides be fatty liver, and then fatty liver is super toxic for the health, for the body in general. So that's why because all this triglycerides stimulate insulin, and insulin is just a carrier of fat. Like, insulin takes all this triglycerides, starts depositing them because they're not being used for energy. So it's terrible. It's terrible. They make no sense to me. Imagine you do all this juicing to detox, but you're putting all this load on your liver, and you lose weight from water, from starving and all that, but it's not a healthy way of losing weight by
Yeah,
any
that's
means.
helpful. And I've juiced before. And so I think I had just gotten my at-home juicer the first time we'd spoken. So I was devastated to hear the news. But I
Yeah.
want to know, how do we take control of our health? And maybe if we were juicing to lose weight before, how can we lose weight with confidence and do it in a way that's healthy and sustainable?
Okay. So I always, all this fat diets, all this keto, and I mean, you name it, low carb. And I always tell people, don't do anything that you cannot sustain long term, because then you're going to be super strict for 4 or 8 weeks. And then after that, you're just going to say, I can't do this anymore. And all the weight you're going to gain back. So I tell people to do not a low carb diet, but a carb smart diet. And I usually give them very specific instructions of the nutritional label, because it also gets overwhelmed. Like, people usually think, oh, caloric deficit. If I do a caloric deficit, I'll lose weight, which is true. You need a caloric deficit in order to lose weight. So cutting portions will create, or like cutting the refined things, like if you're going to eat a salad, you can say, I mean, I can really cut on the dressing. Like, I could put more lemon instead of oil, and you're cutting calories that way. So cutting a little bit of calories, you need a moderate calorie deficit. So like at least 200, 300 calories a day that you cut, which is easy, will bring weight loss over time. Then I tell people to focus a lot on sugar and fiber. So the gut is able to process 30 grams average of sugar per day without sending it to your liver. So I always tell people, this our rule of 3 in our office is less than 30 grams of sugar per day and more than 30 grams of fiber per day, because fiber does completely the opposite. Fiber creates this like barrier. It feeds your microbiome, and it creates this barrier where it doesn't allow sugar to absorb. So healthy carbs are very, very important they give you energy, and they protect your microbiome, and they make you feel full, and they just give like very good stuff. So nobody should be low carb. Okay.
That's super helpful.
Yeah. So carbs that are healthy are carbs that have more than 3 grams of fiber and less than 3 grams of sugar. Those are healthy carbs.
More than 3 grams of fiber and less than 3 grams of sugar.
Yes.
Okay, so taking notes right now.
Yes.
Let's switch gears a little bit because you're not just a doctor, an endocrinologist, but you're also an entrepreneur. So tell us about your journey to Anzara Health.
So when I graduated fellowship, I worked for a hospital upstate New York, in upstate New York. It was an amazing experience. I had a wonderful team. And then when I got married, I came back to New York City and I didn't want to work for anybody because endocrinologists get, you know, squeezed into like a lot of work for no money, to be completely honest. And I didn't want that. Like, I wanted to be my own boss. So I opened my own practice and then COVID hit. And after COVID, for 2 years, nobody wanted to come to the office. Everybody wanted telehealth, and I was basically doing telehealth. And then after 2 years, in this COVID period, I had my baby, and we decided to move to Florida. Then I said, I want to keep my New York patients. Everybody wants telehealth, and I don't want to work for anybody in Florida. So I was talking to a patient, and she's like, you should probably open concierge telehealth practice. I'm like, wow, that's such a wonderful idea. So I contacted so my best friend who was living in Hawaii at the time. She was also trying to relocate because she was getting married. And we said, okay, let's just do this. And we're like, okay, how can we expand it? So we're like, okay, no, let's get more states. So we have now 8 states involved. We had to open an LLC in each state. So it was like a complicated journey, but now we're very settled. We have 2 endocrinologists and 2 health coaches and 1 dietitian that works for us. And we love it. We're very, very happy. And patients are very happy too.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, I have to ask this because I've worked for a lot of huge healthcare companies. So I've worked with a lot of physicians and I've worked with CEOs and executives, and they tend to think very differently. So how was that journey of like becoming an entrepreneur with that like physician brain that you have, where you're usually focused on the care of your patient, maintaining your practice, and now you're looking to build and scale and really grow this business?
My husband is very helpful.
Yeah.
He's a businessman. So yes, doctors only know about medicine and nobody teaches you these things in school. In my private practice in New York, I learned a little bit about the structure that a private practice has to have, but we didn't have any idea whatsoever about how do we do this telehealth. Each state has a different telehealth law. So we basically had to hire lawyers and account in like we have to file taxes in each state and we have to keep track of the patients. It's like, the basis of it was complicated to do, but he helped us a lot in saying like, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. And you just found, and we were very lucky to have found like a good team of like people who really helped us. And you just, without knowing it, you become a business person. We wanted to be very flexible. Our team is only women and we're all mothers. So we understand the the value of time and flexibility and all that. And I think we're doing a good job at that.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like society is really getting it and like moving more towards work-life integration. How can we make work a part of life instead of having this myth of like quote unquote balance? And given all of the hats that you wear as a physician, as a mom, as an entrepreneur, how do you find a way to make it all work?
I prioritize, like what's going to happen if I don't solve this now? Like, can this really, because when you think everything is super important, then you
Mhm.
get overwhelmed and you'll stay in the office. So you have to like set your priorities and say, can this patient wait until tomorrow for my answer? Everybody wants an answer now, and now with social media and like everything is like now, now, now. But no, people can wait. Patients can wait. I mean, I'm not telling you like a week, they can wait a few hours. They can, if they text you at 9 p.m., you don't need to answer that text at 9 p.m. They can wait until the morning, until the office is open. I think it's just like thinking like, is this really like that important, or can it wait? And then after that, you start seeing that most things can wait. And if you keep your routine and you're organized, everything comes together.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And you're so right about the prioritization, but the routine, I'm personally coming to understand like how important that is too, because it sets parameters around your day, which if you're going, especially like navigating from corporate to now like you're doing your own thing, setting boundaries with others is one thing, but like for yourself and for
Yeah.
your time and saying like, this is the time you have to work on it. After that, it's me time, it's family time, it's whatever time, but you have to put those things away to be able to have some semblance of a personal life, if you will.
I learned that after I had my son.
Yeah.
And I learned that the importance of waking up early in the morning, which was so hard for me. I love to sleep so much. And after he was born, I was 40 years old, and I'm like, okay. Then at 40, I started my routine and I stuck to it, because with babies, if you don't keep a routine, then it's a mess. And I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, sleep for me is the most important thing. So he has to sleep so I can sleep. So if that means that my day has to start every day at 7 a.m. for my life to work, I'm just going to keep doing it. And since the day he was born, I started my day at 7 a.m. And that has been life-changing, because I know exactly what I'm going to be doing at certain time of the day. I mean, obviously you give room for like, I'm very easygoing. So I'm not that strict, but yes, routine is so important.
Yeah. So thank you for that. Cause I know we look at physicians like yourself and like you guys are the people with like the least quote unquote balance. And so hearing that from you is fantastic. But before I let you go, because this is confidence conversations, I have to know, what does confidence mean to you?
Confidence for me is to know what you don't know. So if you are always a little humble and you know what you don't know, then you know that the rest you pretty much sure you get it.
Yeah.
And always keep room for learning something.
I love that. And I feel like when we give ourselves that room to just admit when we don't know to ourselves and to other, it like unlocks this grace where we don't feel like we have to like put up fronts or do all of this stuff. It's just, let's learn, let's go with the flow.
Yeah. And each person in this world, if that person has contact with you, is because they came to teach you something.
Mhm.
So we just have to be open to that.
I love that. Any final words of wisdom?
No, this was great. Thank you so much for, taking the time to interview me. No, I really appreciate it. I think the hormone world in general is very misunderstood. And now we're like endocrinologists, we're like fighting against social media and TikTok, and there's so much misinformation, so much. We see it every single day. I think we're the most like disturbed specialty with social media, because everybody considers themselves a hormone expert. And now from like the Ozempic world and people doing this medications, off label, and like giving them a bad reputation to like not using them when it's indicated, like all these things are like very hard for us. So I really appreciate this space so we could talk and like
That's
give
one
more
thing that I didn't
information.
ask you about though. So I would love to talk about Ozempic for a little while. And its new indication. Is it, I don't know if it's a new indication or if it's just being prescribed off label for weight loss. Can you tell us about that and your opinions on using Ozempic?
So Ozempic is a medication I've been prescribing since 2017. When it
Mhm.
became so popular, I'm like, wow, now, like so many years later. But It came, so this GLP-1s have been in the market for a long, long time, like 18 years. It started with like an injection twice a day, then it moved to an injection once a day, then it got approved, that injection once a day, higher doses for obesity, then it was once a week Ozempic, then once a week Ozempic high doses Wegovy for weight loss, and now we have Mounjaro, which is the newest medication. These medications are great. They really, really change the life of so many people, and they keep changing the lives of so many people. They have to be used. Anybody can. So the problem with it is that, in theory, anybody can take it. So people are abusing it. And now this compounded semaglutide is being mixed. All those side effects, most side effects you see in the news of like severe GI things, these people are in compounded semaglutide, because we see it in the hospital. They call and say, oh, this patient came with this like weird thing, and how much Ozempic does she take? Oh no, they take, I don't know, units. We're like, we don't dose Ozempic in units. We dose Ozempic in milligrams, and the pens are very specific. So when patients don't know and they're taking just this like random stuff, is that we know they're compounded semaglutide. We don't know what's mixed in it. It's not legal. All these clinics are illegal. So that is the main problem with it. Ozempic itself is a great medication, and if you know how to use it well, if people are cognizant that obesity or insulin resistance or prediabetes is a disease that has to be treated long-term, the same way you treat high blood pressure, the same way you treat diabetes, then it's an amazing medication. It changes your body. So because when you're overweight, and when you have the tendency to be overweight, is because genetically your hormone doesn't communicate, has some hormones that don't communicate well. These are not hormones we can measure in the blood. These are hormones that are secreted every time you eat, and they connect to your pancreas, and your pancreas releases, and then connects to your brain and makes you stop eating. Like that is a whole cycle of hormones that has to work well in order to create a normal metabolism. So people who have weight gain or prediabetes or insulin resistance, PCOS, like all these things, those hormones are dysregulated. And it takes about 10 years for someone from being overweight to be pre-diabetic. In about 10 years, 5 to 10 years, from pre-diabetes to diabetes. So by the time you're diabetic, your body has been struggling with inflammation and hormonal dysregulation for so long, putting you at risk of so many things, right? So treating obesity is huge, and it's very, very good for patients' health, but you have to do it in a correct way. And these medications work great if you do them long-term and if you do them correctly.
Well, that's really helpful. And you heard it here from Dr. Kausel. So you can do what you will with that and go see your own physician. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much.